Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge, where in today's episode, you'll hear a story where a brother and sister go head-to-head against each other, and how OP deals with a coworker who torments her. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today, and do hit that subscribe button for future tales. We're diving in, guys. I'm currently 23 years old, a female, and have a twin brother. My brother is constantly doing messed up stuff to me, but the worst thing happened about 5 years ago. I got my first boyfriend when I was 18 years old and a senior in high school. Now, I know we were young, but I really loved him. We had been dating for about a year when my brother randomly decides out of nowhere to make up a story about how he caught me cheating and decided to tell my boyfriend. My brother couldn't stand to see me happy. He planned it all out. He came up with the details, he made it sound super real. And because he's such a scarily good liar and a master manipulator, my boyfriend believed him. No matter what I said or did to prove it wasn't true, he believed my brother over me. Now, my brother kept up with his act the entire time and refused to admit he was lying. At one point, I thought I'd finally gotten my boyfriend to believe me, but then he broke up with me a few months later and confessed it was because he was still convinced I'd cheated on him. He couldn't move past it, as my brother reminded him constantly when I wasn't around. The worst part about this is that my ex is still walking around to this day thinking I cheated on him. And I hate that a lie had broken his heart. The last thing he said before he broke up with me was, "I hate that you won't tell me the truth." I want to cry every time I think about it, and I still miss him to this day. Also, I think it's important to note that my brother has never once apologized. He is so insanely mean that he thinks it's just funny. I even asked him multiple times if he'd consider calling my ex and telling him the truth, and he just laughed at me. Now, I never did get over what my brother did, and I always just told myself that I was gonna do the exact same thing to him one day. He's dated a lot of other girls after high school, but he's never been serious enough for me to consider tricking him. I knew it wouldn't hurt him like he hurt me if I just tricked one of his flings or something. But he finally got his first serious girlfriend last year when we were 22 years old. And after thinking about it for a long time, I decided that I was gonna do it. We live in different places now, so I had to do it all online. And I used a different method than he did. I contacted his girlfriend pretending to be the girl that he cheated with. I made up an elaborate, detailed story like he did to me. I made my story even more believable than he made his, and exactly like he did to me. I went as far as denying it, even to him, because I knew he might use my texts and calls to prove to his girlfriend that it isn't true. He knew I was behind it though, solely because the girl I made up doesn't exist and there's no one else that would do this to him. But I kept denying it. His girlfriend wholeheartedly believed me, and my brother kept calling and texting me, begging me to give it up. I never admitted it was me though, but he knew I did it. He was manipulating me, and arguing that it's different because I was younger when he did it to me, and my relationship wasn't serious. But my relationship was serious, and like I said, I still miss my ex. My brother really messed me up, and I do have empathy though, and was starting to feel bad for his girlfriend because she's innocent. I was kind of regretting everything and thinking that maybe I should tell his girlfriend the truth for her sake, not his. But then, his girlfriend then asked me a question, which led her to admitting that she's been suspicious of him for a long time. So I pried a bit and encouraged her to look through his phone. She told me she couldn't because she didn't know the passcode and he wouldn't give her access to it. I guessed a few passcodes I thought it could be and made up a story how we were laying in bed and I saw him type it in. And she gets in because it ends up being the same passcode he's had since 2012, when our dad got us iPhones and made us use the last 4 digits of our grandma's phone number. Anyway, lo and behold, it turns out that my brother had actually cheated on her, and my setup was the reason she found out. He's been talking to and hooking up with multiple girls for pretty much the entirety of their relationship. And I'm not surprised, because he's a terrible person and cheating seems right up his alley. But I'm shocked at the same time. I literally can't believe things worked out so perfectly. It feels like a dream or something. Now, I hate to revel in his girlfriend's misery, but I was feeling guilty about her being collateral damage. So I feel like this is the best possible outcome. My lie ended up being the truth. Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. So I didn't scar his girlfriend or leave her with permanent damage for no reason. All my interference did was speed up the process of the truth coming to light. In fact, my brother may have been able to hide his cheating forever if not for me. He probably would have just manipulated his girlfriend or refused to give her phone access forever. My brother screws people over all the time, but somehow always gets his way anyway. It's honestly infuriating and scary. Anyway, I'm not gonna admit to my brother that I'm behind it all because there's no point. That would just get me in deeper trouble. I got a comment on my original post that said, "Deny till you die, baby." and that's exactly what I plan on doing. Oh my goodness gracious. With a brother like that, who needs enemies, right? All I can say is that OP might have to watch her back because her brother might escalate things to a whole new level next time. So scrolling through the comments, a lot of people have told OP to guard her social media, hide her life from him, and basically go no contact from him because he's a sociopath. Let me know what you guys think though. Do you think OP getting back at her brother was a fair revenge? Should she have just left it? Or was it not enough? Now the next story is going to be a really long one, guys, so get ready because OP destroys her crappy coworker's career. 4 years ago, when I was 24 years old, my mom died of breast cancer. And as both my grandmothers had also died of it, I saw a specialist for a screening. I found out I had some cells in one of my breasts that could have turned cancerous at any given moment. I was told I had a few options. 1. I could have regular screenings every 3 to 4 months until it does develop into cancer. But it could also potentially never turn, so I'd just be getting these screenings for no reason. 2. I could get a single mastectomy on the breast with the bad cells, but they'd need to keep an eye on the other one, so I would still need regular checkups for the other breast. And 3. I could get a bilateral mastectomy and remove all of my breast tissue, basically eliminating all the risk. So I went for the bilateral mastectomy. It was admittedly the most drastic option, but after seeing what cancer did to my mom and my grandmother, I didn't want to risk it. I was warned about scarring, but told it should be fairly minor. It wasn't, and I was left with 2 huge pink jagged scars on either side of my chest, each about 1 inch long and half an inch wide, and it caused me to go into severe depression. It got to the stage of me not even leaving my house because I didn't want people to see me, and I was getting physically sick looking at myself. I then went to a therapist who suggested a plastic surgeon. The therapist said that they'd normally not do this kind of thing, but it was clearly something I was struggling with and I might not get over it. And the therapist could see why I struggle with it. Although, I'll admit that the therapist did send me to ask about scar reduction. The plastic surgeon suggested a cream, a laser, or implants. The cream didn't work, and the laser was expensive and risky, so I went with the implants. I was a natural F cup, so I went with a slightly smaller double D. Since then, my mental health has improved and I feel a lot better about the way I look. My confidence has gone up, and so has my self-esteem. Now, I know I shouldn't put so much into my appearance, but I wasn't exaggerating about these scars. They were huge, bright pink, jagged, raised, and just really awful to look at. And now, they're nicely hidden away, and you can barely feel them. So in the present day, I'm 28 years old, and working in an office. I'm doing a lot better than I was. My coworker Jill found out that I'd had a boob job when myself and my friend from years before the mastectomy were planning a holiday, and she made a joke about me going on a plane with my implants, and Jill overheard. By the end of the day, the entire office knew that I'd had a boob job, but not why, and half a dozen people confirmed that Jill had told them. Over the next few months, Jill had made many jokes and comments about my chest to coworkers when I was in earshot, and at one point, she said that I had more plastic than Barbie, and calling me fake in 2 ways. Now, I didn't hear this one myself, but a friend in the office told me that Jill had at one point referred to me as a sack of silicone. Now, I don't know what her problem was exactly, and I asked her to stop more than once. But unfortunately, the places I talked to her were places like the lift and the women's bathroom where there weren't any cameras, and Jill just kept making comments, no matter how often I asked her not to. I wouldn't say it was every single day, but I heard at least 3 comments per week for 3 months. I hit my breaking point when me, Jill, and a few other coworkers were having lunch. I referred to my nephew taking swim lessons and how he's starting in the shallow end. And Jill then says, "You'd know all about being shallow, wouldn't you?" While gesturing to my chest, and I snapped. I said, "Do you know why I have these?" A few years ago, the doctors potentially found cancerous cells in my breast tissue, and I was advised to get a mastectomy and was left with huge, ugly scars on my chest. I went to see a therapist who sent me to a cosmetic surgeon who advised me to get implants to hide the scars, and I did just so I could look at myself in the mirror without crying. So maybe next time you want to judge someone for having cosmetic surgery, you should ask them why they had it first. Now, I felt like that was a mic drop moment, and I picked up my food and left. For the rest of the day, I had about a third of the office come up to me and offer support, and the rest tell me that Jill was just joking around and I was overreacting and need to learn how to take a joke. I then get an email from HR saying they wanted to talk to me the following day, and when I called for clarification, they mentioned a hostile work environment. Now, I knew the person who signed off the email and I'd spoken to. Her name was Debbie, and she was Jill's friend in HR, so I was fairly confident on who had reported me. Now, I realized that if this was being sent to HR, I needed as much ammunition as possible, so I went about collecting my information. And as Debbie has dealt with me so far, it was safe to assume that she would be the person reviewing the complaint with me. And if that was true, I was screwed. However, I vaguely remembered a section on complaints that was in my contract when I first signed with the company. I flicked through the contract and there was a part in the complaint section that said that I was contractually allowed to request a change of reviewer if I felt my allocated reviewer was biased. This was called an impartial overseer. So I photocopied the page and highlighted that part. Then I messaged the people who had offered their support over Facebook and said basically that HR had asked to see me. Do you remember Jill insulting me to your face? And are you willing to write and sign something saying what you heard and when? Not everybody was willing to help out, as Jill is somewhat feared in the office due to her befriending HR and management, but about 20 people were willing to help me. I then wrote down all the times I'd asked Jill to stop harassing me, along with a rough time of when the lunchroom confrontation happened and a list of names of who was there. I get to work early the next morning. I went round to everybody who had messaged me, and most of them managed to give me a printed and signed letter. Now, this isn't the exact words, as there's 16 letters to sum up here, but the gist was, my name is so-and-so. I work with Jill and OP. On this date and this time approximately, I spoke with Jill, during which she referred to OP as quoted insult. I felt this was inappropriate, as it directly related to OP's appearance, and I'm willing to go on record further to establish that Jill has been discussing OP in the workplace in the same manner for 3 months now, causing me discomfort and creating what I feel is a hostile work environment. Signed, their name. I wound up with about 16 letters, all from different people, and one of them was in the lunchroom for my conversation with Jill. Some even had a list of everything that Jill had said to them about me, or other people, as it turns out that Jill has issues with a lot of people's appearances, all of which were put in the letters. There were about 45 people in the office, so while 16 wasn't a majority, it was still a decent amount. The letters weren't hugely long, most were only a paragraph, and they had all the necessary information. I was asked to come to HR at 10 a.m. I took the letters from coworkers, the photocopy of the page in my contract, and my dates and times in a little folder with me. I got there and Debbie was the one overseeing the interview. She got up from her desk, ready to lead me into another room. I immediately turned to the other HR worker that was currently there and said, "So is my meeting with you then?" Debbie says, "No, you're with me." I replied that this wouldn't sit well with me as my contract states that I have right to an impartial overseer. And as I said this, I took the contract page out of my folder. Debbie read it and grunted, saying that she could be impartial. Now, I replied that I don't really mean to be a pain, but the person on the other end of the complaint is her friend, and my contract does say that I'm allowed an impartial overseer. So Debbie stomps off to get a supervisor. The supervisor asked how I know she can't be impartial, and I tell him that I have it on good authority that Jill, who is on the other end of the complaint, is a close friend of Debbie. He asked Debbie if this was true, to which she only replied, "I can be impartial." The supervisor takes a deep breath and asks the other HR rep to come with him, and the 4 of us all went to review the complaint. I thank them for being so accommodating. Debbie takes out the complaint, and all 3 of them went through it with me. Debbie looked homicidal the whole time the interview was happening, as she had clearly anticipated firing me. So the interview goes something like this. It took over half an hour and they kept asking me the same questions but phrased it different ways, so this is a really drastically condensed version. They asked, "You said outside that you think Jill, last name, reported you. Why's this?" I answered, "Well, Jill has had an issue with me for about 3 months now. Why didn't you come to us when you realized that Jill had an issue? I had no issue with her, so what issue does Jill have with you?" I told him 4 years ago, a specialist identified potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. I had a surgery to remove my breast tissue, thereby removing the cells and the risk. After surgery, I was left with huge scars on my chest. I went to a therapist for low self-esteem and depression. The therapist then suggested a plastic surgeon, who then suggested breast implants to cover my scars. All of this is in my medical history, which you have a copy of in my file, and my full permission to review. Jill finds out about my breast implants but didn't know about the cancer. Jill had a problem with my breast implants and decided to communicate this problem with our coworkers. The next question they asked is, "Why do you feel this is true?" I told them, "Here is 16 signed statements, all from different coworkers, all testifying that Jill told the entire office that I had breast implants on the day she found out and has since then made comments about these implants frequently. They also have quotes of what Jill said to them about it and rough dates and times." They then asked, "Rough dates and times?" I told them no one knew this would be escalated to such an extent, so no one really took notes as to when it happened. "So what event or events do you think directly led to this complaint of harassment?" I told him, for me, harassment began when Jill told everybody about my breast implants without my consent. But as to the complaint placed against me, it would probably be what happened yesterday in the lunchroom. Jill made a complaint about me being shallow while gesturing to my breast, and I replied by giving her an abridged version of my relevant medical history, ending with a comment about the importance of getting the full story. There are cameras in the lunchroom, so I'm sure you'll be able to find that conversation. I'll admit that I could have handled the situation better, but after 3 months, I felt I had to put my foot down. Here are a list of names of people who were present. There were 6 people at the table, including myself and Jill. One of these people is also in those letters, and has written their account of the conversation and signed it. The next question. Have you ever had a conversation with Jill prior to this regarding her comments about you? I told them several, spaced out over 3 months. Each time, I had communicated to her that I felt uncomfortable and upset with these comments, and would appreciate it if she were to stop. So, to your knowledge, was Jill made aware of your former cancer at any point in this time? I told them no, it wasn't mentioned in the conversation with my friend she overheard, and I didn't tell her because quite frankly, it's none of her business and I didn't feel the need to detail my medical history to a coworker in order to avoid further sexual harassment. At this point, the supervisor stands up and says, "Well, I think we're done here." He then shakes my hand and sends me back to my desk saying that I'd hear from them after they reviewed the evidence and made a decision on the case. So I get back to my desk, pulled up my CV, and prepared to start the job search again. About an hour goes by. Then the person who wrote the letter and was there for the lunchroom conversation gets called for a meeting with HR. They come back about 10 minutes later. The other people who were there for the lunchroom conversation get called in one by one, except for Jill. All of them are gone for 10 minutes, then they come back, find a coworker, and say that HR wants to see them. Then the people who wrote the letters but weren't there yesterday are also called in one by one and are each gone for about 10 minutes each. Some longer, some shorter. By about 3:30, it looks like everybody who wrote a letter or was there in the lunchroom has been interviewed. Then finally, Jill gets called in. She's gone for about 30 minutes and comes back fuming. She glares at me, but I ignore her. About 4:30ish, Jill gets called into HR again. 5 p.m. rolls around and everybody's leaving or getting ready to leave when Jill storms back into the office. She glares at me the whole time she's packing up her desk. She then starts telling anybody who'll listen that my big mouth got her fired before shoving her way onto the elevator. An email comes in from HR. My case is closed. Guys, that was definitely such a satisfying pro-revenge. Imagine getting put on the chopping block for standing up to workplace harassment, all because you're buddy-buddy with HR. The best thing to do in this situation is exactly what OP did. Proof and documentation is the best way to take someone like this down. Now, I wonder why she was so vocal about OP's implants in the first place, but whatever reason it was, it cost her her career, and I absolutely love it. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /pro-revenge. Guys, if you enjoyed the stories today, do give it a thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on this channel, a Karen robs paramedics because they were blocking her car. She tried to teach them a lesson. Guys, check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.